Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/IDontWorkHereLady, where Karens seem to think that everyone on Earth is meant to serve them. And in today's episode, we're dealing with nasty Karens, guys. And one OP tells the story about the time a Karen messes with her and regrets it big time. I hope you enjoy the stories. Don't shake your heads too hard. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So this happened years ago, when I worked on the top floor of a large county courthouse. One day, I was coming back from break. I got on the elevator and immediately moved to the back because they get crowded pretty quickly and I'd be last getting off. That day, only one other person got on the elevator. It was a big man in expensive attire. You know the type. 3-piece suit, gold cufflinks, Rolex. The guy calls out, "4th floor." I'm just standing behind the guy, looking at my phone while he's right in front of the button box, so I just keep minding my own business. He then stiffens up and then barks out, "4th floor." And at this point, I put it together. This hotshot expects me to walk around him and push the button like I'm an elevator operator in some 1940s department store. I ignore him once more. And that's when he turns around and looks at me. And then he says, "I said 4th floor." And this is when I gently say, "Sir, you know the elevator's not voice operated, right? You have to push the button." Hearing that, the guy just stares at me blankly. And I was way too chicken to add the button that's 6 inches from your hand. The guy presses the number 4 button and life goes on, but that was my little I don't work here encounter. Courthouses are pretty egalitarian places in my experience, so it was a bit of a culture shock to encounter some uptown lawyer who was used to having peons push buttons for him. That is some frickin' entitled behavior, and OP's response to him was brilliant, guys. I only wish I was that quick-witted to be able to make a comment like that makes him look stupid. That is so much better than the good old do-it-yourself that I would have thrown out there. But yeah, some rich people do think they're better than others, and everybody is meant to serve them, like this next Karen. So back in the early 90s, I used to work at a 5-star hotel. In those days, I wore my hair short to conform to the dress code. I changed careers late in the decade, and I was able to grow my hair and wear it long, which is my preference. This happened recently, 25 years since my hotel days. My wife and I were staying at a fancy hotel one night, and we were heading out to a wedding reception. I was dressed in my suit and tie. It was a hot summer afternoon, and I was standing out front of the hotel. I was holding our large wrapped present, waiting for my wife to pick me up in the car. This is when a limo pulls up, and a lady wearing a leopard skin jacket and too much makeup gets out. She had a tiny dog on a leash, wearing a matching leopard jacket. And you could tell, this lady looked ultra rich. We made brief eye contact, but I looked away, as I was laughing to myself over the matching outfits. This is when my phone rang, and it was my wife, telling me that she'll be coming up in like 3 minutes. While I'm talking to her, I heard a far-off "excuse me," and then a closer one, and then a screechy one right next to my ear. I turned around to see Leopard Lady was standing right next to me. I was standing to one side of the revolving doors, and I was pretty sure I wasn't blocking her, but I moved a few steps away to give her room. She followed me, and she said "excuse me" so loud that my wife asked who it was. I finished with my wife, and I looked at her, and I say, "What?" Well, in her snooty, entitled Karen voice, she says to me, "You need to get off your damn phone while you're working. You have people waiting to get their bags brought inside. Now that you're finally done with your phone call, are you going to get my bags or not? The limo has to leave." Still not fully comprehending what was happening, I literally spin around to see if she was talking to someone, a bellman perhaps, that had snuck up behind me. But there was no one. The woman now had her hands on her hips, and she was standing off against me. Even the little dog she had adopted an aggressive stance. She then said to me, "Well, are you?" I said, "I don't work here, lady." I then laugh and say, "I'm going to a wedding. Plus, would you hire someone with a haircut like mine?" Karen did not laugh at my little joke. She just huffed and said, "Well, if you won't do it, then go inside and find me someone who will." I told her again that I didn't work here and she should ask inside the hotel. She huffed and stamped off to the front desk. 30 seconds later, the valet driver arrives, having brought a guest car up. I gave him the heads up that the luggage in the limo was a check-in. Also gave him a heads up about Leopard Lady. The hotel's concourse was full now, and I saw my wife's car in the street waiting to turn in, so I walked towards her to save her from having to turn in. By the time I got to her, got the present in the trunk, got in, and drove past the hotel, I saw that Leopard Lady had the valet driver, another bellman with the cart, and she was standing with her hands on her hips, having them get her multiple giant suitcases. I heard her scolding them about something. As we slowly drive by, we again briefly make eye contact. I did consider giving her the finger, but I settled for flipping my hair as a parting touche. Yeah, rich, demanding Karens are the worst, aren't they? And the upsetting part is the fact that she was ripping into real employees after that. And you know what they say, guys, money truly can't buy class, and maybe one day she'll mess with the wrong person, and her suitcases will end up in a dark alleyway in the garbage or something. When this happened, I was a manager for a high-end wine and liquor shop. We were known for having helpful and knowledgeable staff. Our employees would frequently have in-house samples of wines and top-shelf liquor. Our work attire was a white button-up shirt with black slacks. Think fancy restaurant waitstaff. So a week after Thanksgiving, we had a very Karen customer. The woman had cornered some poor guy, demanding he answer her questions. I heard him state no less than 3 times, "Lady, I don't work here." Now, this guy's attire was similar to ours, but he was wearing a tie and missing our bronze name tag. The Karen wasn't listening to him though. To her, he did work there, and he wasn't answering her questions because he was uneducated and lazy. She was upset at his rudeness towards her. Her plan was to talk to the manager and have him fired. At this point, customers, staff, and myself overheard her because she's loud. So I approached the situation with a smile, and I asked if there was anything I could do to assist her, and Karen was appalled. She says to me, "No, I don't want you. I'm going to get helped by the employee." Now, I had just overheard her ask him the difference between 3 top-shelf Scotch brands. So once I began to answer Karen's questions, she shut me down hard, saying, "Did you hear what I said? I want this employee to help me. It's his job." This is when I tell Karen, "Ma'am, he doesn't work here, but I'd be happy to help you though." This is when Karen exhales and she spoke very forcefully. She said to me, "Even if you do work here, I want a man's opinion on Scotch. This is a gift for a man, and women do not drink Scotch. You need to get me your manager." This is when I say to her, "Ma'am, I am the manager, and I would like to apologize." I then lock eyes with the male customer, and I say, "Sir, I apologize for this woman's behavior. If you found what you were looking for, we can help you up front." I then look at Karen and say, "Ma'am, you need to exit the store." Hearing me say that, she replies with the most smug look on her face, and she says, "Okay, but if I leave, I will never shop here again." To which I respond, "Okay, you are banned." This is when Karen insisted it was illegal to ban her, and then she tossed a few profane threats as she walked out. The woman paces back and forth in front of the store, loudly complaining about the terrible injustice. She then announced in this shrill voice that she was calling the police. She then made a big show of the phone call, shaking her fist, pointing at the shop while shouting into her phone. It actually got so bad that I had to get my employee call the police for trespassing. When Karen saw the cop car, her face lit up and she grinned at me. We saw the officer trying to calm her and writing notes. A different officer spoke with the not an employee and myself. A few others chimed in. Karen was ultimately arrested for disorderly conduct, disturbing the peace, trespassing, and resisting arrest. As she was hauled away from our plaza, she was fuming. The guy, who was the actual victim, called out to our store and said, "Now that's customer service." It turned out he was a local comic who had acquired new material for his act. A very nice guy, very funny. I gave him a discount on his purchase for his troubles. You know what? With finding out that the guy was a comic at the end of the post, I'm actually curious as to how that would have played out if OP didn't interfere. Like, most of them can totally hold their own, right? And I bet he could have made Karen cry if he wanted to. But yeah, what luck though. A Karen encounter ending with an arrest is like finding gold to a comic. So this happened about 3 weeks after I started my old job. Late November last year, I get a job in customer service with a collections agency that went through staff like a boss babe goes through her Facebook friends. Our training was 3 weeks intensive, and in that time, myself and 7 other bastards who signed up with me did not interact with the 60 other employees on the call center floor. We were asked if we wanted to go to our company Christmas party, and despite not knowing anyone, I figured any opportunity to put a suit on and drink myself stupid was a damn good one, so I accepted. The party rolls around, and it's at a swanky golf club in the countryside. I do my best to mingle, but no one paid me much attention. It's also worth mentioning at this point that I'm in my suit trousers and waistcoat, which does make me surprisingly look like the venue's catering staff. I'm also a smoker, so I frequently went out to the front to take a minute and brush off the fact that people did not know me or want to talk. At about 11:30, after all the food had been served, I walk out the revolving doors. I light a cigarette, and that's when I hear a middle-aged, drunk colleague Karen, whom I had met, say to her friend that food was effing awful. Oh god, there's one right there. The woman's looking straight at me. I kind of look her up and down and shrug. She then takes a drag, puffs out her chest a little, and she says to me, "You know what? For the amount our company paid, I expected the food to be so much better. My food was cold. Your service here sucks." At this point, it's been 3 hours. I'm drunk and I'm fed up, and this is the most anyone said to me all night. So I just play along and I say, "It's okay, lady. They don't pay me enough to care." Cue the look on her face. She was livid. The woman starts sputtering about getting my manager and sorting out my attitude. Again, I just shrug and I went back inside the venue to enjoy my last half an hour of awkward small talk. The night just went on until the first half of us were piling onto the 72-seater that we'd hired to take us back. So I get on, and in the first couple of rows, I can see Karen sitting there with her friend, and she goes off on me. She screams at me and says, "Why the F are you on this bus? This is for employees of my company only." She then yells out and says, "Mark," the manager sitting in front of her. She then says, "Tell this idiot to get off. He's trying to get a free ride home," and complain to his damn manager he doesn't even like his job. I'm just completely done at this point. The evening has been crap, and I'm starting to sober up. I just keep walking, and I sit down near the back. I had only met Mark 2 or 3 times at this point, but it was damn funny listening to him trying to convince Karen that I did the same job as her. And here's the funny thing. We worked together for the next 6 months, and she would try to avoid me every single chance she could, and I never got an apology. Way back in the days of flannel and combat boots, more commonly known as the early 90s, I had gotten a job at a certain blue vest store. One of my best friends had gotten me the job with a plan to work with him. He was an overnight GM stalker. Unfortunately, there were no openings for his half of the store, so I instead become an overnight grocery stalker. I was fresh out of high school, and I was dressed like every other teenager in America. Flannel shirts, open over a concert shirt with blue jeans and black boots. And at this point, there was no dress code for overnights other than decent clothes and no sandals. We didn't even have the blue vests. So one fateful night, I was meeting my dad for my lunch break. Some particularly stupid teenage boys had decided to rob our store. And you want to guess how teenage boys in the 90s were dressed? If you said they were dressed just like me, you win first prize. So there I am, in all my pseudo-lumberjack glory, walking out of the store to meet with my dad. And suddenly, I'm grabbed from behind, my arms twisted behind my back, and I'm slammed, and I mean slammed, into the cement wall of the store, face first. My face is now bleeding and ridiculously sore, and at this point, I have no idea what's going on. I actually thought I was being robbed, and that's when I noticed 3 other guys, again dressed just like me, against the wall in the same pose. They all have police officers behind them, and now I can only assume that I do as well, and I begin to relax. I mean, I did nothing wrong, so they have to let me go, right? Wrong. Somewhere behind me, I can hear my dad asking what's going on, and the cops telling him to go away. And this is when I hear my manager, and I think, thank God, he'll straighten this out. But I was sorely mistaken. Now, this stupid manager thought it would be funny to tell the cops that he had no idea who I was, and that I don't work here at all. Enter Carly. Bless Carly, because I would have gone to jail that night. She was the GM manager. She told the police who I was, and then she loudly berated my manager in front of everyone. Once they released me from the armbar and pulled my bleeding face away from the wall, Carly asked if I was okay. I politely told her I was, and then quit on the spot. Her response was, "I don't blame you at all." I never did get an apology from my manager or the cops. My manager was later transferred and demoted though. I'm not sure if it was for this or not. So yeah, I no longer work there. Guys, I cannot help but feel bad for OP. Like, imagine just going on break and then getting your face smashed against the wall, all because you look like a thief. And to make things worse, the stupid manager pulled that little stunt. Like, I'm so glad he was demoted and fired, because what type of joke was that? Like, if I were in OP's shoes, I think I would have gone scorched earth on that place, especially with the manager being that dumb. So I'm now retired, but I used to be a teacher. I'm also a wheelchair user. This story is about the time this one horrible Karen thought I didn't work there. That said, I was lucky to work in a school with a very understanding head teacher who treated me like any other employee and did everything she could to accommodate my needs without treating me differently. I specialized in special education needs and disabilities, and as part of my job, I would attend meetings with other professionals linked to certain students. So think social workers, therapists, youth workers, and council staff linked to education, along with parents, foster parents, etc. Some of these meetings would be at my school and some off-site, but my head would always offer up a meeting at our school because the school was fully accessible, so I didn't have to worry about driving to, finding parking, and then worrying about the building being fully accessible. Now, the majority of the time, everyone not from my school was more than happy to come to us, as we were centrally located. We also did good catering with a proper coffee machine and nice fruit platters and pastries, instead of the usual stale biscuits and cheap instant coffee. So win-win all around. One day, I had this meeting with a new student, who we'll call Fred. He was going to be joining my class. I was liaising between the various people involved in the meeting, which included Fred's social worker. They were then liaising with Fred's foster parents, as I didn't have their contact information. I knew the social worker from other students, and she knew that we would have the meeting at my school and why, and she was more than happy for this, and we arranged it all. So the day of the meeting, I'm alerted by reception that my guests were here. So I roll off to meet them, and before I can approach, the foster parents were ranting at the receptionist about how ridiculous it was that they had to come here, all because someone in the meeting had a disability. They were ranting how stupid it was to pander to people like this, how people will make up disabilities to be the center of attention, and how it's getting worse and it was never like this in the past. The couple were in their 60s, and this poor receptionist is trying to get a word in. She spots me, and she looks embarrassed, knowing I've seen and heard this, but I don't care. This is when I roll over, and I introduce myself as Fred's new teacher. And before I can say anything else, I'm interrupted by the woman. And the woman says to me, "Don't you lie. You aren't his new teacher. You can't possibly be a teacher if you're a wheelchair." And I want to note, she didn't say wheelchair user, she just said wheelchair. Something I sadly get a lot when people, for example, would say a wheelchair wants to come in, like I'm some sort of an object and not actually human. But I digress. The woman then turns to the receptionist and she goes, "Can you let the real teacher know we're here?" She then turns to her husband and she goes, "Phone the social worker. This is ridiculous." At this point, poor Fred has his head in his hands, and the guy looks so anxious and shy, like he wants to disappear. This is when I lift my lanyard and staff badge to the woman, and I reply, "You might think I don't work here, but I can assure you that I'm Fred's new teacher, and that my legs not working has had no effect on my ability to be a teacher. Those two aren't mutually affected by each other." At this point, the social worker, the educational psychologist, and another worker walk in. And the foster mom goes, "Oh, thank God you're here. None of you look disabled, so why you insisted on us having the meeting here for that reason is way beyond me." She then turns to her husband and the receptionist, and she says, "I told you, people make up all sorts of disabilities nowadays, and they want everyone to pander to them. It's getting worse and worse." She then turns back to the social worker, and she continues on and says, "Also, Fred's teacher hasn't arrived yet, but she," thrusting her finger in my face, "is trying to say that she's his teacher, when she clearly can't be. Look at her." The social worker is completely shocked. She then says to Karen, "I will remind you now that both of you are new foster parents, and so are subject to frequent reviews to assess your suitability for the job." This is when foster Karen butts in and she goes, "What do you mean? We're here and agreed to come to the school to accommodate one of you apparently having a disability I can't see." The social worker just sighs and she goes, "Well, insulting Mrs. Teacher here and all disabled people isn't really a great first impression. Mrs. Teacher is indeed Fred's new teacher because wheelchair users can be teachers." Foster mom tries to butt in at this point, but the social worker holds up her hand to silence her, which makes the foster mom get even more red in the face. She continues on talking and she says, "Plus, this school is actually closer to your house than the council office is. It has free abundant parking, unlike the council offices. And best of all, it has amazing coffee and refreshments, unlike the council offices. So having the meeting here benefits all of us, not just being more accessible for Mrs. Teacher here." Before the foster mom can utter a reply, the social worker ushers us to the meeting room to start the meeting. The poor receptionist later said that she felt so much secondhand embarrassment and anxiety that she needed something to do, and she kept apologizing for not doing more. The meeting went well, as we tried not to let the mom say much. I did get a very curt sorry from the mom at the end of the meeting, followed by a, "But you can see now why I was confused, right? It's just very odd to see someone like you actually working, especially in a job that requires a degree." Hearing that, I just laugh and I say, "Wow, next, you'll be telling me that I can't drive or vote or get married or, live a normal everyday life, all because my legs don't work." The father said a more apologetic sorry, but I got the feeling that she's very much in control of that relationship, and his life wouldn't be worth living if he said anything else. The other professionals in the meeting looked more concerned for the couple being foster parents, and all of them said to one another, "I can't believe I've witnessed all of this." In the meeting at the start, the psychologist said that he's worked with me a number of times, and how lucky Fred was for having me as a teacher, as I was very good at my job, which I think had angered her more too. Fred looked very sorry, and was also embarrassed at these new foster parents treating me like they were. Lucky for him, a week later, he was removed from them, and he was placed with a lovely couple who had fostered other students of mine in the past. Fred flourished with them, and he was a delightful student to have. He had been dealt some awful cards in life, and despite all that, he was a lovely child. I often wonder what he's up to now. I sure hope he's doing well, and guys, I was beyond happy knowing he was removed from those nasty people. Like, holy, the stuff that foster mom Karen was saying. You'd think she was severely impaired. And guys, I am super scared to ask, but like, do some people literally think that just because someone's legs aren't working, that their brain is somehow not working as well? I only wish OP called Karen out on the spot and said to her, "Ma'am, please explain to me and everyone here why you think I can't be a teacher." That, or, you know, give her a few smacks upside the head, because the things some people say are absolutely ridiculous. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/IDontWorkHereLady. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitledpeople episode, where Karens are going absolutely wild. Guys, go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.